Hello and welcome to Module 1 of Adobe Photoshop for Absolute Beginners. I'm Mark and I'm going to take you through this tutorial. I say absolute beginners because before we get into Photoshop, we really need to understand what an image is. So this module, we won't even go into Photoshop at all. We're just going to go through the different things that affect an image, whether that be the colors, the resolution, the number of pixels. So let's get on with it. Let's talk about a time before digital photography, when you used to have to take your film to the developers to get it developed. And you would say what size you wanted your photos to be. And they could do them various sizes from the negatives. Yeah. Depending upon the quality of the photo, it really depended on how big you could make it. But if you think to when you get a passport photo taken, you go and get your passport photo done, and it comes out, you get these 4 tiny little photos. Now imagine you want to put that picture of your face on the side of a building. Yeah. From that tiny little photo, there's not really enough detail so that when you put it on the side of a building, it would look good. It might look good from a mile away, but from 10 yards away, or even half a mile away, it might look poor. So you've really got to think about size that you want and the size that you're going to finish with. So you might start off scanning something at A4 size and at high resolution, but not realize that's not a high enough resolution to go on the side of a building. So just like you couldn't take your tiny little passport photos and make those go on the side of the building, you can't take tiny little digital images and make them bigger. And I'm just about to explain the reason why. So the reason for this is because as you create an image, you set a length, a height, and the number of pixels in every inch. Now, what are pixels? Pixels are tiny little colored dots. If you've got 300 pixels in an inch, every pixel is 1/300th of an inch. Now, you can't see that. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to perceive that with your eyes. Yeah, but that's perfect because you can't perceive it with your eyes. But let's say we did the same image and we did it at 3 pixels every inch. Now, if you had 1 inch, yeah, which is about that long, yeah, you're going to see each colored block 1/3 of an inch. So it's really important that you understand the biggest you're ever going to make this picture and how many pixels per inch you need to output it to the final destination. Now that all sounds really complicated already. So let's have a look at a quick example. In this image, on the left, you can see a photo that's been taken at the correct dimensions with the correct resolution. And on the right, you can see a photo that's been taken either at the wrong dimensions at the correct resolution or the right dimensions at the wrong resolution, and both affect each other. So if we zoom in now, on the photo on the left, we can zoom in quite a lot before we start to see the colored dots. But on the one on the right, when we zoom in on the one on the right, yeah, we can see the dots almost immediately. Now, imagine you wanted to take both these photos and put them on the side of a building. One of them, the dots would maybe be perceptible, and on the other one, the dots would be perceptible because they would be the size of a human head. So what you don't want is to have that horrible situation where you go to send your logo or your photo off to somebody to put it on a t-shirt or a banner or a sign and find that when they print it out, you can see all those pixels. Now, there's a terminology for that, and that's called pixelation. And we do not want to see pixelation unless we've chosen to. So some designers, they use forced pixelation to make things look dynamic and different. And that's great because what they do is they know the rules and then they bend the rules. But until you understand the rules, you can't break the rules. So pixelation comes from not having a high enough resolution, and all resolution is how many pixels there are in your image versus how big it is. So we know that we've got pixelation, we've got resolution, and we've got pixels per inch. As you can see from the examples, if you don't have all 3 of those things correct, then your image is going to look poor, and then your promotion or whatever it is you're using the image for just isn't going to work. So the next thing is color modes. There are two main color modes, although there are other color modes as well. Yeah, the two main color modes we're going to focus on are RGB and CMYK. So how do these two color modes work together? Well, when you're working on your screen and you're working in Photoshop or you're looking at images, you're looking at an RGB. So you create your document in RGB, yeah, and it looks great on the screen. You then send that off to the printer goes to print it, and his computer uses a thing called a color lookup table. That color lookup table says, whenever I see that color, I print this color. And if you don't know what his color lookup table is, what you're going to get is a conversion based on his color lookup table's parameters. So what you're going to see is not necessarily what you want. The other problem with printing from RGB images, and it's a lot better these days with the way that RGB images are saved, is that sometimes you get certain colors that spread in the image and it almost looks like it's got a pattern to it. So you don't want to be sending your RGB images to your printer, but very importantly, you don't want to be using your CMYK on your Instagram and your Facebook and everything else. Yeah. So you think, oh, what do I do? First thing you want to do is you want to think about where you're going to use this image. Yeah. If you're predominantly going to use it for screens, you're going to use it for your profile picture, or you're going to send it to somebody to have a look at as holiday snaps. Yeah. If you're going to do that, you want to create it in RGB. In fact, 99% of what I create in RGB, and then I convert to CMYK. The other 1%, when I know I'm going to print, is that I just start in CMYK from the start. Okay, so why would I want to start 99% of my jobs in RGB? Well, it's because Photoshop has a much wider support of tools for RGB files than it does for CMYK files. So unless you want to be restricted, like you would if you're creating a go to print file where you really, you're going to type the colors in, yeah, you know what colors you want, yeah, you really want to start as an RGB. And then when you send it to the printer, use the Photoshop conversion to CMYK and then adjust everything in the colors to look how you want it back again. Okay, so we've got those color modes, and then we've got other color modes as well. There's grayscale. If you put something into grayscale, then it completely wipes out all the color, and you're effectively getting what you would call a black and white image. And then finally, there's bitmap, and that only works in solid black and solid white. And so what would happen if you had a photo in grayscale and then you changed it into bitmap, then all of the face would suddenly become pixelated because it couldn't have the levels of gray in between. So it would say, this bit's black, that bit's white, this bit's black, that bit's white. But we really don't want to go near that. We don't want to touch bitmap. Yeah, we don't really need to go near grayscale because we can just desaturate images within our RGB or CMYK files. So what we're going to focus on mainly in this tutorial, yeah, is on the RGB side. And if anyone wants me to add a CMYK conversion tutorial as well, I can add that as an extra at the end. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is solid image versus transparent image. So certain ways of saving files allow you to save images with transparency. And what I mean by transparency is if you look at this image here, it has a white background and it does not show anything behind it. But if you look at this image here, the white background is gone because the background is transparent and you can see what's going on behind it. Yeah. So you have to take into account when working in Photoshop, right from the start, it will create you a background image. You decide, do you want that to be a solid white or a solid black or whatever solid color you want? Or do you want that to be a transparent background that you're then going to put things on? Reason you would use transparency is, for example, let's say you're designing a t-shirt. If you design a t-shirt with a black background with white text on it and save it as a solid file, and you send that off for them to print on a black t-shirt at a print on demand company, you'll probably think it's going to look fine. If you then choose a blue and a green and a pink t-shirt, all of a sudden you're going to have a big black square in the middle of your t-shirt and it ruins the design. Yeah. Furthermore, you probably don't realize, but the black one's going to have a big black square on it as well. So we need to understand when we do and don't need transparency. And I'll be covering that off in this tutorial as well. The next thing we're going to talk about is file types. So as you know, when you save files to your computer, you have to save them as a type of file, whether you're in Word and you're saving it as a Word doc, or if you're in Excel, saving it as an Excel doc. Yeah, they have extensions called .doc or .xls. Yeah, and you know what that document type is. It even gives it a little icon that makes you see what it is. So when we're doing a complex Photoshop file with layers and channels and masks and all sorts of things in it, and these things won't mean anything to you right now, then when we do that file, we can save it as a PSD and it remembers the layers and remembers the masks. But then we can get into other types of files like you have a JPEG file, you have a bitmap file, you have a PNG file, you have a GIF. There are so many different ways to save these files, and different files save in different ways for different reasons. For example, a ping that will allow a PNG ping will allow you to have a transparent background whilst retaining high resolution. Yeah, and that is also a widely used format on the internet. So the beauty of that is, one, it will give you transparency, and two, it's widely used on the internet. Now, it can be restrictive on file size, yeah, which is why you may, if you're doing a solid file, prefer to use something like a JPEG. A JPEG is a compressed file. So what that means is it uses maths to try and remember where the pixels are, and then cut some corners. So although your image is now, instead of 100 megabytes, it's only 10 megabytes, when you try and reopen it as an 100 megabyte file, actually it will act more like a 50 megabyte file or something like that. Yeah. So it is compressed to save space, but still have a really good resolution. Then you have a bitmap file, yeah, which it's just another type of file that you can save in another way, and we really won't be using it in Photoshop. And then you have a GIF, and that's where we might want to create animation. Again, we can use animation from within Photoshop and create an animated GIF, just like you see when you press the GIF button on your phone when you're using Instagram or something. So there are so many different types of files. As we go along, we're going to learn what each one does. It's really important to know at the start that the key ones are a PSD file is the main file, like a doc or an Excel would be for Word or Excel. That's your Photoshop's main file. Yeah. Then if we want transparency, we're going to use a PNG. And finally, if it's a solid image and we want to save space, we're going to use our JPEG. I hope that was all nice and clear. And if you'd like me to go over any points again, please put something in the comments and I will make a new video or make a modification to this video to suit your needs. And finally, before we end this video, I just wanted to talk about what Photoshop is. So to me, it's not a photograph manipulation tool, it's a pixel manipulation tool. So as we just talked about, we have a length, a height, a number of pixels per inch, which gives us our resolution. Yeah. Every single one of those pixels can be manipulated independently. So Photoshop isn't just about modifying images and using sort of global parameters to adjust things, yeah, which it's great at. It does wonderful things, but it's also about knowing that every pixel can be moved individually. That's really key to know, because if you're having problems, you've got an image and there's just a little lump or bump or something on it, you can go down to pixel level and find out what the problem is. Yeah. So just to recap everything we've been through. First things first, we talked about resolution. Then we talked about color modes. Then we talked about transparency. Then we talked about file types. And finally, I talked about Photoshop as a pixel manipulation tool. If all that makes sense, then we can move on to module 2. Because when we get into module 2, you're going to see everything I've just explained in action. We're going to open up Photoshop and we're going to manipulate some pixels. Thanks for watching this video. Please leave me lots of comments. If you like it, please press the like button. And if you really liked it, why not subscribe and press the bell notifications? Thank you so much for your time. and I'll see you at the next module.